This is something unprecedented for myself. I'm Angela Yee, and with the beautiful glasses, my idol, Angie Martinez,
Oh, stop it. That's because I can't see.
is also here. But we've never done a joint interview before, but this was such an important message that we wanted to get out. So we are being joined today by Tamika Palmer and Tamika Mallory. Hey, Tamika Palmer, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you, ladies?
We're great. And we want to thank you so much for joining us because Tamika Palmer is Breonna Taylor's mother. And I know a lot of us have been hearing about Breonna Taylor, but we want to make sure we break down this whole story and all the details because we actually, Angie and I participated along with Tamika Palmer with a Zoom call that was a real call to action. Let's break down, Angie, if you went to that Zoom call and what that was about.
One of the reasons I really wanted Angela and I to do this together is because I was really, I didn't really think about it until Lanita and Tamika Mallory, who were on the call, shared with us that sometimes getting justice for women is not, it's for some reason it seems harder to get people's attention and get people organized and get people riled up. And that really disturbed me. Mm-hmm. And we were on a group full of incredible women. Each person on that Zoom vowed to be committed to getting Breonna's story out there and to getting people to understand that something actually can be done and needs to be done. And Angela and I were just part of a large group of women who also made that commitment. And we thought that together, number one, it would be the first time that her and I did anything together, and together that we could use both of our platforms to help get Breonna's story out. And I know a lot of people know, and the hashtag has been trending and everybody knows what happened, but I would love to hear from you, Tamika, exactly what happened to your daughter.
She was killed by Louisville Metro Police Department. Friday, March the 13th, they went into her home for a warrant or something or another. Did not announce themselves. Yeah, I'm sorry, but yeah, so they went in there, didn't announce themselves, scared the crap out of her and her boyfriend, who apparently let off a shot, and then they proceeded to shoot 20-something times into the home and shot her 8 times.
Okay, so the reason why they went into Breonna's home was they said they were looking for somebody who didn't even live at that address, who was allegedly selling drugs out of the house. And that person had already been in custody.
Right.
Prior to them even entering the home.
Exactly.
What we learned from you when we spoke to you yesterday was that, because, we hear conflicting stories about whether he actually lived there at some point, or he used to live there. You actually told us that that's not true at all.
Yeah, he's never lived there.
Mm-hmm. And they had what was called a no-knock warrant. So can you break down what is a no-knock warrant? Because this was my first time hearing about this too. I didn't know you could just barge into somebody's house, break down the door, and not even announce yourselves. And there are some discrepancies on whether or not the police announced that they were there, announced that they had a warrant, or if they just broke in, because apparently both Breonna and her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, thought that somebody was breaking into their home, and he was a licensed gun owner and did fire at the police because he thought that somebody was breaking in, correct?
Correct. He fired at the police. He also called the police because he did not know that these were police officers coming into the home. So apparently, like you said, there's no knock there. They can come there, bust down the door, and just come in. They hit the door with a battering ram. Several times, Breonna and Kenny both were screaming, "Who is it? Who's at the door?" They never announced themselves. But when they first released their story, they said that they announced themselves. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Kenny, several neighbors, no one heard them announce themselves.
Right. And so what was even more shocking to me was that Kenneth was actually charged with shooting a police officer with was it attempted murder that he was charged with at first?
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to set this scene because hearing the story from you personally really changed some of the perspective I had. Well, not that I had any other perspective except that justice should be done for Breonna, but it just really, I really understood the moment and how it happened, that this young girl, this seemingly amazing girl who had a career in to help people. Clearly she cared about people. She was a healthcare provider. She was a EMT worker, was home minding her business in her own apartment, and somebody busts into her house. And from what I'm understanding, even though the police say that they announced themselves, this is a small apartment, correct? This is a complex where if there was police activity, a neighbor, somebody in the hallway, I mean, is it the type of apartment where you hear your neighbors? Like,
yeah, there's not a hallway. Each person has their own door, but it's a very small square there that you go in to get into these there's 8 apartments in each building. So yeah, you absolutely will hear somebody out there. So
right.
Had there been any break-ins or anything that would have, or would that have been caught people's attention, that they would have heard that noise of people busting in? And
yeah, I mean, because it's unusual. Any of the neighbors would tell you she's pretty quiet. They never really ever heard her. You know, they saw her coming and going to work, or, you know, coming and going with my other daughter, which is her little sister. But they never really made a lot of noise. So to hear all of this stuff going on would alarm people.
And imagine that you're in your house doing what you're supposed to be doing. It's after midnight, you're asleep, and you're in bed, haven't done anything wrong. You're an EMT worker, wanting to be a nurse, always have helped people your whole life. And something like this could happen to you in your own home. And then on top of that, right, have these police officers been charged with anything yet?
No.
No, they haven't been charged. They haven't even been fired.
No, they're on administrative leave, so they're still being paid by the police department.
And what's shocking is this happened March 13th.
Yes.
Yeah, one of the saddest things that I learned from you, Tamika, on the phone yesterday, and I heard you say also at one of the protests, was that you have felt alone for quite a while. Like, people are stepping up now and really demanding justice, and really inspired by some of the other things that are happening in this country, that people are like, okay, let's focus on Breonna now. But you have been fighting this fight since the day you lost your daughter.
Absolutely. And I felt alone because, you know, you hear these different stories all the time. The police go in, it's a raid going bad, people are shooting. So you think these people were selling drugs and shot at the police. So people kind of moved on, when in fact that wasn't the case at all.
Mm-hmm. So now, what is the mayor saying in Louisville? Like, what's happening now? Where are we at with this investigation? I heard the FBI is involved, but you know, it feels like, and you know what else? When we were on that call, I just want to flash back to that. What happened when you did find out about your daughter? Because they did give you a runaround.
Where were you when you found out? Like, who called you? How did you even know something was happening?
Kenny called me, her boyfriend. I was home in bed. Kenny called me and said that somebody kicked in the door and he thinks Breonna is shot. And I'm like, what do you mean you think she's shot? Where is he? He said he couldn't see. Like, he was yelling her name and like screaming for her. But so of course I jump up and we get disconnected. I drop the phone and whatnot. But so I get dressed and I head over there. But in the middle of me heading over there, I'm calling Kenny's phone. He's not answering. So I'm calling Breonna's phone and she's not answering. And so when I get to her street, it's lined with police. There's an officer at the end of the road who I tell that I need to get through there. Something's going on with my daughter. She tells me that I needed to get to the hospital, that 2 ambulances had been through. One took an officer and the other took the girl, whoever was hurt. And when I get to the hospital, I'll tell them why they're there. So they check. She comes back and said, well, she's not here. And I said, well, I don't know. Maybe I got here before her. And so I sat there for about 2 hours, and the lady comes out and says, well, ma'am, there's no recollection of this person even being on the way. Mm-hmm. So I knew that I needed to get back to the apartment.
Wow.
So wait, they sent you to the hospital knowing that she was not at the hospital?
Yeah.
And she was still in the apartment?
Yes, ma'am.
Like, why did they say this even happened?
Well, at that point, they didn't. No one knew what was quite going on. But once I got back, I was able to get through a little more, so I was closer to the apartment. And there were some more officers kind of standing there hanging around. So I told them who I was and that I needed to get into the apartment and see what was going on with my daughter. So they told me to hang tight, that a detective would come over and talk to me. And so we stood out there about 2 hours before the detective came over. So when he comes over, again, we introductions, who I am, who he is. And so he asked me if I knew of anybody who would want to hurt Breonna or Kenny. And so of course I say no, of course not. Like, they're
Why
not
would they ask you that? Why would they ask you that when they knew who did that to her?
Well, at this point they still hadn't told me who did this and what happened.
Oh.
So he's
wow.
just, yeah. So I asked, where's Kenny? Like, I need to talk to Kenny. And so he told me to hang tight. So he came back about another hour and a half, 2 hours later, and he asked, had Breonna and Kenny been having any problems? And I'm like, are you insinuating Kenny did something to Breonna? Because Kenny would never hurt her. So I'm like, so at this point I'm screaming, where's Kenny? I need to talk to Kenny. So he says, well, Kenny's at one of our offices trying to help us piece together what happened here tonight. So they say, he said, well, I asked about the officer being shot. I said, well, why was there, they said an officer was shot. He said, well, he was here responding to a call. And I said, a call for what? And he said, well, there were some officers there to serve a narcotics warrant. And I said, for who? Because Breonna and Kenny ain't selling no narcotics. And he said he wasn't for sure. He hadn't seen the warrant. And I said, well, I want to see the warrant. And he said, well, that he didn't know where it was, that they hadn't seen it, that it could have gotten lost in the shuffle of things. So he tells us to wait again. So it was probably about 11 a.m. when he comes back over and tells us that it'll be a little bit longer. They'll be wrapping up and that we'll be able to get into the house. And I say, well, why won't you tell me where Breonna is? I need to see Breonna. And he says, well, she's still in the apartment.
Wow. I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that we have to make you tell this story. And even.
But it's important that people know the details of what it is that you went through, the cover-ups. And yeah. I can't even imagine how that must feel to know that they gave you the runaround like that at that time. And the only thing you want to know is, where is my daughter?
Yeah, exactly. And so when he says she's in the apartment, I knew what that meant at that time. So I said, well, I want to see her. I need to see her. I need to know that it's her. And he said, well, we've identified her through paperwork. And I said, well, how do you know it's her? Because there's 2 women that live in that apartment. And he said, are you sure? And I said, yes, I'm sure, because my other daughter lives in that apartment. But at the time I knew she wasn't home, but I wanted to see Breonna. And he said that I still couldn't see her, that it would be up to the coroner. So the coroner finally arrives, and it was about 1:30 p.m. when the coroner comes out and says, that I wouldn't be allowed to see her, and that they've already identified her. And so they kind of just, some other people like snuck her away in this van while the coroner was talking to us.
Has at any point anyone apologized to you?
No.
Has at any point, I'm sorry, what were we going to say?
Let's give her a moment.
I'm okay.
Okay. No, we really do appreciate you for your strength and being able to relay this story. I know you've told it countless times, and we just want people to hear your story, and we want some action to be taken. What does justice look like for you now?
these officers being fired and arrested. If anybody else would have done it, they'd be arrested. So they obtained a warrant under a lie. They told several stories, and so they should be arrested. I mean, they lied. There was no reason for them to be there. And the person you wanted, so you proclaimed to want it, was in custody. So to go in there at 1 a.m. and scare her and kill her.
I see Tamika Mallory is here now. Hey, Tamika.
Hey, everyone. Hi, Tamika.
Hi.
Tamika and I share names, and also we share the exact spelling of our names. And so I feel really drawn close to her. And I'm sorry, Tamika. I'm sorry that you have to keep telling this story and keep reliving this every day. But we really need to get the story told. And Angela and Angie, thank y'all so much for having Tamika and me on today. You know, this story, if you are a human and it doesn't hurt and you don't feel like something has to be done as a result of it, there's something wrong with you. You have to know, you know, they come up with all the excuses, Angie. They come up with everything. They say, well, you know, he was driving too fast. Well, she, you know, Sandra Bland, she was too mean. This one was too nasty. Respect police. Maybe they were selling drugs. Maybe they were high. Maybe there's always something. But in this case, there's nothing.
Right.
There is absolutely nothing. You can't come up with one excuse for why Breonna Taylor is dead except gross negligence. And if you are a doctor and you killed someone because you were drinking on the job, or you gave them an open heart surgery when you were actually supposed to be working on their appendix, you would lose your license. You would lose your license. You would be fired from wherever it is that you work. The police department and police officers across America are the only people that can kill people with impunity. And that has to stop.
And then have the nerve to charge her boyfriend like he did something wrong when they knocked down the door without announcing themselves.
Exactly. And it's hypocritical at best. And it's also racist. And I'll tell you why. Because first of all, we know they're not doing this in other communities. Folks have already been doing the research. And I see attorney Lanita Baker there. People have already been doing the research. They're not going to people's houses in nice white neighborhoods and knocking down their doors on no-knock warrants. It's not happening. We know that. So folks that say, oh, well, maybe, no, we know it's not happening. And you're kidding yourself if you say that it is. But we're living in a time, and this is the challenge that I have with elected officials. How can you have one law that says you have the right to fire a warning shot, and then another law that if you feel you're in danger, you have the right to fire a warning shot? And then you have another law that completely contradicts that, saying that a person can execute a no-knock warrant on your home. So when can you use your right to protect and defend your home? Mm-hmm. It's not clear. And these elected
how did they even justify charging him in the first place? Like, what was the justification of that? If that is the law that you can fire a shot?
Maybe Lanita can answer that question. I don't think there's a justification. I think that people are just rogue and folks are just doing whatever they want to do.
What I can tell you is when they presented Kenny's case to the grand jury, the testimony of the officer was 2 minutes long. The testimony said that police were executing a search warrant when they entered the home, that Kenny admitted to firing a shot which struck the officer in the leg. So it's that he admitted to shooting them, and that's it. They did not include the portions of his statement that he did not know it was police officers. They did not include the statement. They didn't mention Breonna's name at all during this 2-minute presentation to the grand jury. They, they didn't mention that it's so much wrong with the grand jury presentation, and we know that's another historical issue, right, in how they present cases to the grand jury. And when they dismissed it, the Commonwealth attorney talked about they should have played Kenny's full statement. They didn't play any of his statement. They didn't allow him the opportunity to testify. And then they only chose those parts of the statement that said he admitted to firing a shot, which shot the officer. So.
And you see, the issue with that is, we've all heard the statement that a prosecutor can indict a ham sandwich, right? If you put the right information before a jury, a grand jury, they can definitely get an indictment. A conviction, that's a different thing, but definitely an indictment. And so they know how to manipulate it. And what they do is leave out important details. And of course, a judge is giving the instructions that you're not allowed to bring into it whatever you heard from the news, whatever you may have heard in the public sphere. So you have to only make a decision based upon what is being presented to you in this grand jury. And that's why when you hear protesters say the whole damn system is guilty as hell, that it has a very significant meaning. It's not just some good ringy chant that we came up with. It means that the courts are working in conjunction with the district attorneys and the police department, and the entire system is failing Black people in America.
So what can we do now? Right.
What do we do now? How do we help? I know the system is one conversation, but how do we help Tamika get justice for her daughter right now as a community? What can we do?
Contact the mayor's office to fire the office, to have the officers involved fired. That's Officer Brett Hankinson, Miles Cosgrove, and John Mattingly. They need to be terminated from their positions. Daniel Cameron, the Kentucky Attorney General, needs to charge the officers and prosecute them aggressively. And then we also have this Thursday, Metro Council will be voting on Breonna's law, which as it is written now, is to significantly limit the use of no-knock warrants to only the most egregious of offenses like kidnapping, murder, human trafficking. But there is discussion to make that a complete ban on no-knock warrants. And we do think that that is important. So those are the three things right off the bat: is ban no-knock warrants, terminate the officers, and charge and aggressively prosecute the officers.
I see that they did temporarily suspend no-knock warrants in Louisville. So
yeah, we want the law to change though, because that's one thing we've been pushing. Yeah, we suspend policies. Yeah, we suspend policies, and then next week they secretly are reinstated, and we never know about it. So we want to change the laws.
And they also are policies that exist in other jurisdictions, and that needs to be addressed as well. We found out just talking about two other incidents, but it gives you an understanding of some of the issues from a federal perspective. Both of you asked, how do we address this and how do we get justice for Tamika Palmer? And what she has said, which I appreciate so much, is it's not just about her, that no mother should have to deal with what has happened to Breonna Taylor. So that means we have to change the law across the country. And I'll give you an example of the inconsistency. It took us 5 years to get Daniel Pantaleo fired in New York City for choking Eric Garner to death. I can't breathe. We remember that 11 times. And it still took us 5 years, even though it was illegal. The chokehold in New York is illegal. But in Minnesota, where George Floyd has now become the second person to die because he was choked to death, there is no chokehold ban. So we don't even have one standard across the books from a federal perspective in every single state that protects people. We're dealing with different laws in different states and different jurisdictions having the ability to apply the law however they choose. That's not, but the issue of police brutality is not just happening in one place. It's happening all over the nation. And therefore, our elected officials who want to take a knee and they look nice with their kente cloth on, that, I'm still trying to figure that out from yesterday, but whatever, do whatever you want to do. If that's
Let's get the work done.
If that's what it takes. But the question that I have is, at what point do you open up the books and say, how are we protecting people? How are we in each state? What are we doing to ensure that people are protected and that police are being held accountable? And if it doesn't look like things are consistent, then that work needs to be done.
Yeah. We were just talking about this morning on the Breakfast Club. We were saying how in every city, every state, it's just different laws. And so you might be able to use the chokehold here and you can't use it here. And, like we just were talking about, the no-knock warrants. Some places you can have it, some places you can't have it. Like, what are these laws? It's very confusing. And that's why so many things are able to go under the radar. Even talking about civilian boards. I know you guys now in Louisville are trying to put together something so that officers can be held accountable. We have that here, but then once you complain, what happens?
Yeah, and we have a civilian review board now that has no power to do anything. So really,
Right.
what are we doing? And I think this, as an attorney, this is a time for the attorneys. We have to work with our communities and educate our communities better on how we can change these laws, starting locally, statewide, nationally. So we have to, as attorneys, we have to step up. So.
What do you think, Lanita, because this is your case, you know, I know we need to call people, we need to use our voice, we need the platform, we need to raise awareness. But what specifically, because, you know, I've had people tell me, oh, I called, nobody answers up, or I called, now what? Or what is the next step? So everybody calls, everybody stands up, which we're hoping everybody will do. And if you are not moved by hearing Tamika Palmer's story, to do something, to call, to email, to show up, if you are not moved, I don't know what could possibly move you. But so now that people are moved and they're going to take that action, what is the next step?
We have to stay engaged, stay focused, keep the pressure on, because I can tell you, even just the pressure that we've gotten in the past few weeks, we've seen movement, which is more than we typically get from the city. So it's just keeping the pressure on it and not moving on once it's not in the, so you just have to keep the pressure on, I think is the big thing.
Okay, and Angie, if I could just add one thing. When you call these numbers, because we do tell people to call all the time, and when folks call these numbers and people don't answer or the phone is busy, you may feel like I didn't do anything or I didn't get through to speak to a person. But what you should understand is that you have made them shut the phone lines down. That is an act of protest. They can't do their normal business through their phone lines, and they've had to take them off the hook or put a voicemail on because they know people are calling. So just keep calling, keep the lines flooded. You know, sometimes we feel like we need to see, especially living in this era that we're in now, we want to see everything happen tangibly, quickly, right before our eyes. But these movements don't happen quickly, right, and it doesn't happen easily. It's a long haul. It really is.
Now, Lanita, can you break down for me with the FBI investigating now and their involvement? And now I know there's like different agencies working in tandem. What's the movement on that? And how can we make sure that that doesn't let up?
So the FBI is going to be more interested in whether or not there's civil rights violations. And I think that there are grounds to assert that there were civil rights violations. So my hope is that their investigation goes even beyond just what happened on March 13th, but to a broader investigation of this unit and the way the unit has operated, and bring forth civil rights violation charges and criminal charges, not just civil penalties. So I want criminal charges from that investigation as well. I don't think that they would charge for the murder of Breonna, so I think that still is Daniel Cameron and his wheelhouse. But my hope is also that the independent investigation, I hope one moves faster than we know the Louisville Metro Public Integrity Unit investigation has moved, but it's also more thorough than what we already know. And I'm going to say their lack of investigation. I don't even like saying that they've done an investigation because they keep saying they need 3 more months. So I don't think they've done a real investigation.
Okay.
I would like to ask you, Tamika, well, both Tamika, Mallory, you could probably speak to this too, because I remember, the Trayvon Martin case and how you were saying earlier about how they always try to find a ridiculous reason to justify it. Oh, there was the drugs, or he was whatever. They try to find things to put some type of doubt in people's mind as to whether this is just murder or not. And I remember when we first started to get to know Trayvon, it was like, this wasn't a great kid. He was his family loved him, and his family stood up, and we saw all those photos and stuff. And and only what you're willing to share, Tamika, and only what you're comfortable in this moment. If you could kind of just share with us who Breonna was, and who something about Breonna that maybe we don't, beyond the headline, beyond the hashtag, what people should know, that this is a woman who deserves justice.
She definitely deserves justice. Breonna would have helped anybody. Like, you couldn't, so many times when stuff like this happened, they go and dig up their criminal histories and their whatever they can find. They couldn't do that. She didn't have a criminal history. She didn't do these things. She worked in 2 hospitals. She went to work every day. Her little sister lived with her. My whole entire family loved her. Her friends loved her. The people she worked with loved her. You know, like, you couldn't yell at Breonna and she wouldn't cry. You know what I'm saying? Like, she was not that type of person, and she would do anything for anybody. And that's just, it's sad to know that this happened to her, to the way that she was treated, the fact that nobody even rendered aid to her. To treat her like that was just unjust. Like, who does that?
One thing we were talking about yesterday is, Breonna, she just wanted to save lives.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was her passion, is taking care of people. And so it's our hope that we continue to save lives in her name, especially by pushing for no-knock warrants, pushing for, the requirement that you have a body camera on and you activate the body camera. And if you don't, then there needs to be serious repercussions for not. So she'd like to save lives while she was here. And we're going to continue to work to save lives, in her name.
Well, we will make sure we continue to say her name. Tamika Palmer, I am so sorry that you felt alone during this time, but know that you're not alone now at all. And we will make sure that everybody knows about this story. Tamika Mallory, thank you so much for organizing everything. This is what you do as a true leader, to make sure that we're aware of these stories and can do whatever it is that we can to help. Is there a way that people can get in touch also, if there's any type of assistance that they can offer?
Yeah. So folks should follow Until Freedom. I'm sorry, we're moving in the vehicle, but folks should follow Until Freedom on socials, and also go to www.untilfreedom.com. And there's information about all the folks you need to call. There's a vote in Louisville that's coming up this week on Thursday in reference to the no-knock warrants, banning the no-knock warrants. The number for all the city council folks is on our website. There's a link there so you can find the city council members and call them one by one and tell them that they have to vote to ban no-knock warrants. So untilfreedom.com has all the information that you need about this situation, and we will be updating it and making sure that it stays fresh so that as new developments happen, you can get the information.
I have just 2 quick questions before we jump off, because we mentioned this earlier about women kind of banding together around Breonna, and also the difference in how justice for women sometimes doesn't get as much noise. And I wonder if you had any thoughts on that, Tamika, or if you guys had any thoughts about just specific roles as women and making sure that we stand up for her, or why that happens, or how we change that.
So actually, Angie, I have to run because I have a really important call that's about Breonna Taylor right now coming up. But I will say that we know from Sandra Bland, Rakia Boyd, and too many women, Deborah Dana, some of which you don't even know the names, that women don't receive the type of attention that we should receive as it relates to media attention, laws being changed. I mean, I saw a petition today saying reopen the case of Sandra Bland, and it should be reopened because there was no justice in that matter. That's just the way that the world operates. We live in a society that focuses heavily on men. And women's issues are often secondary, but also the media does not give the type of attention that the two of you are giving to this situation today. And so we as women, but also our allies and our brothers, have to be intentional about ensuring that Breonna Taylor stays in the media, and that anytime a woman is killed by the state or anyone else, that her story is properly told. And we have the power to do that. And I think we're going to see even a difference in how women's issues are covered. And Breonna Taylor, unfortunately, is the catalyst for it.
Thank you, Tamika. Thank you so much for taking the time. Please be safe. Please be safe.
Thank you.
I love it. And maybe, Lanita, you could speak to this for me. Or maybe you also, Tamika, my last question is, Kenny. What can you tell us about Kenny? And also, I asked you, Lanita, is Kenny going to be able to help in just legally in getting justice, and what's his role going to be in that? But also personally, I would like to know, I mean, personally, like what I would like to know about him.
Because you knew immediately he had nothing to do with anything, and you knew that off the bat.
And how is he? It's so funny because I was talking to my fiance, who's, we were just talking about this yesterday, and I was telling him about our conversation, our call, and how he said, I would have did exactly what he did if it was me.
And that's what we want. So you got a Black man protecting his Black woman, and he was arrested and faced charges of attempted murder for, almost 3 months. He's coming around. He wasn't able to properly grieve because he was in custody. He couldn't attend the funeral. Their families are extremely close. I've seen them interact. I've talked to Kenny a number of times. The crazy thing is that though his charges were dismissed, and this is something people really need to know, the Commonwealth attorney made it clear that they were dismissed without prejudice, meaning he's holding this over Kenny's head, saying until the end of the investigation. So Kenny can't even speak freely about what he went through that night. And, I have no doubt that he is here because God wanted someone who was there that night to be able to tell the story of what happened. We are forever grateful for him. And I know Tamika wants to say something special to Kenny while we have this platform.
Yeah, I just want to say happy birthday, Kenny, and I love you. And
is it his birthday?
Yes, his birthday.
Oh, so their birthdays are right next to each other, Breonna and Kenny. Okay.
Yes, so happy birthday, and I love you, and you will forever be our family.
So he was in custody during that time? Like, not only did they arrest him, they had him in jail being held?
He ended after his criminal defense attorney presented some of the information that we were able to uncover, talking to witnesses, that that the officers did not announce themselves. Luckily, he had a great criminal, a judge on his criminal case who released him at least on home incarceration. But even being on home incarceration, it's horrible. We've been on, we could still leave when we were on COVID, but people were acting crazy, not being able to go anywhere on COVID. He couldn't even go on the park, so.
Wow.
God bless him. It was really insightful for me to hear that, from my partner, because he was like, he must be going through a hard time, because I would have done the same thing. And then as a man, you want to protect your woman when you feel somebody's breaking in. And so he's been on my mind a lot too, wondering how he's doing and how he's holding up. And
I can't even imagine mentally.
Prayers out to him too. Yeah. Were they together for a long time?
About 5 years.
Oh, wow. That's a long time.
They were best friends. They were best friends before
that anyway, from school. And so they've been around each other forever.
So he's basically your son also.
Absolutely.
God bless him.
All right. Well, we'll keep on making sure that we keep this story out there. If there's anything you need from me, from Angie, we are here.
Anything. Our platform. But we wish we could.
Thank you, ladies, so much. I am so grateful.
All right. And again, this is the first time we've done this. This will be on Angie's show. It'll be on the Breakfast Club. And we will continue to make sure that we spread the word.
For sure.
Thank you.
Justice for Breonna, everybody. Thank you so much, Lanita. We appreciate you too. Tamika, God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
911, Operator Harris, where is your emergency?
I don't know what's happening. Somebody kicked in the door and shot my girlfriend.
Okay, where are you located?
I'm at 3003 Springfield Drive, apartment 4.
3003 Springfield Drive, apartment number 4?
Yes. Oh, my God.
Okay, how old is your girlfriend?
She's 26. Bring it. Oh
you said 26.
God.
Where was she shot at?
I don't know. She's on the grill right now. I don't know.
Okay.
Mama.
You said she's 26. Is she alert and able to talk to you?
No, she's not. Breathe. God.
Okay. And you said you're in apartment number 4?
Hell. Oh, my God. Yes, hell.
What's your name, sir?
Oh, my name is Kenneth Walker.
You said Kenneth?
Hell.
And you said she's 26?
Yes.
Okay. You said 3003 Springfield Drive, apartment number 4?
Yes.
Okay. Can you check and see where she's been shot at?
I can't get on her stomach. Oh,
Okay. Is she alert and able to talk to you?
No, breathe.
Okay.
I think oh, oh my God. What the fuck? Oh my God.
Can you get her turned over on her back? I need for you to check her and see where she shot at.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I gotta go, Mama.
Okay.
I gotta go you back.
Kenneth, can you hear me?